Yeah, yeah. It just looks like
Yeah, right. So, we don't have a few minutes before we switch
okay, great.
2000 to get it.
Okay, yeah. I think we got a lot.
Very good.
Well, that's crunchy. Okay, we have a few more people coming in, and then we'll get started. All right. Welcome, everybody, to It Takes a Community, helping teens navigate stress, school, and adulthood. My name is Tracy O'Neill. I am the graduate assistant for the psychology department here at Delaware Valley University. I am very pleased to have Janet Sasson-Edgett here, along with our panelists, to talk to you about something that's very dear to my heart. I have 2 teens at home who are late and should be in the audience right now, but they will be here. It's a struggle. I was an educator prior to turning over to counseling, so now that I am in that experience and seeing clients who are ages, 10 going into their adulthood, they're really struggling. And I'm hoping that tonight gives us all a wider view and some resources to go home with. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Janet Sasson-Edgett.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Counseling Psychology Department of Del Val.
Would you like me to say a little bit more about your book and everything?
You can, sure.
Yeah. So let me just say a little bit about Janet here,
Okay.
so she's not introducing herself, sorry. Janet is a psychologist in Exton, PA, specializing in adolescent therapy, family therapy, and parent coaching. She is the author of 7 books, which are out front. If you are looking to purchase at the end, we will be out there. Her most recent being Therapeutic Conversations with Adolescents, Helping Teens in Therapy Thrive in an Ultra-Competitive and Screen-Saturated World. Janet is also an avid rider, so she has some horse riding books out there as well. You guys being Aggies would definitely love that. All right, thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Just a note about the QR code.
Yes. Oh, yes, and at the end, we are going to have a QR code for you linking to Janet's slides, as well as the resources, and if you are not able to attend or stay for the entire program, it will be on the Delaware Valley University YouTube page or channel, so feel free to watch at your leisure or go back and review anything you may have missed. We are going to have the panel ask or answer questions for you. There are post-notes, post-it cards going around so that you can write anything down, and we will collect them before the panel begins. And for those of you online, if you want to put anything in the comment section for the panel, that will work too, and we will get those questions answered as quickly as we can. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much,
You're
Tracy.
welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So a few years ago, I was doing some research for a book I was writing about adolescent therapy. And I decided to plug this question into my browser. What do people think of when they hear the word teenager? And that's what came up. Angst, waste of time, really? Hate parents? I mean, some of them are just really not nice. Some of them, yeah, fair enough, impulsive, stuff like that. But there was just a slew of them. To be fair, there were a couple of other ones that were a little nicer. These over here, yeah, gregarious, moody, not moody and lazy, thoughtful, warm and caring. But there's no doubt that clearly the first list is a lot longer than the second list. And so seeing that, I just started thinking about this narrative we have about this portrait, this very, very fixed portrait of teenagers that we have in our country. And this portrait tells us that once kids go through puberty, they're going to be virtually unrecognizable to their parents, and they're going to become monumentally difficult and insufferable to raise. That's what we're taught. And this is the portrait of adolescence that's handed down generation after generation, largely unexamined narrative about teenager, and that's what we learn. Okay, so consider this brief exchange between two characters in Pat Conroy's novel, The Prince of Tides. You have Tom Wingo, who's this depressed and disenfranchised football coach, and Dr. Lowenstein, his sister's psychiatrist. And so Wingo has just insulted Dr. Lowenstein on the parenting of her teenage son. So Lowenstein says, "My failure to be a good mother for Bernard is a constant torture for me, Tom." And he says, "No, you're not a bad mother. Bernard's a teenager, and teenagers are by definition not fit for human society. It's their job to act like assholes and make their parents miserable." So it's kind of funny in the movie, and it's funny in the book. But I'm thinking, in real life, it's like, whoa, holy cow, if that's what we think about teenagers, then how the heck can we expect ourselves to really get along with them and understand them? And I think that's a big problem. The other thing is, how could we afford to be so flippant about something where so many parents and teachers and therapists and teenagers really struggle to understand one another and to speak one another? I'm not so sure we can. My point is that we can't keep recycling the same old reasons for why adults and adolescents feud as much as they do and expect anything to change. But it is kind of what we do, because we stand around and, like, with other parents of teenagers, and we kind of smile or smirk a little bit sheepishly, and we say things like, I don't know, we're just trading in our collective anxiety for this belief that we're not alone, and somehow that makes us feel better. We're just one of a weary troop of soldiers trying to, socialize our young Philistines. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but we say things like, "Oh, don't worry about it, she's just a teenager," or "She'll grow out of it," or "Come on, it's all those hormones. That's what kids do, teenagers do all the time." And we're like, yeah, that's it. It's because of the hormones. That's right. That's the idea. I really believe this, that if we're going to change the conversation that we're having with teenagers, that we have to change the conversation we're having about them. And that's what I'd like to do here tonight. And, we're talking about how can we better support kids and sort of shepherd them into young adulthood, and eliminate some of the stressors along the way. But I don't think we can get better at supporting kids until we get better at communicating with them, because that's where there's this real miss. We have so many good ideas, and all the wisdom and all that stuff won't count for anything if kids aren't listening to us. And I think largely kids are not listening to us. Why? Well, the message may be good, but the delivery, not so much. You have a lot of reminders, you have a lot of lectures, you have a lot of reprimands, and these things just fall on deaf ears. Kids can't really have the interest or inclination to mine through those words for the things that would be valuable to them. But what if we take a look at what does draw teenagers toward adults? What is it about adults that kids will find credible and that they'll find respect-worthy? And I think if we could kind of take a look at those factors, I think it'll give us some opportunities to improve our communication with teenagers, but also our relationship. So let me just briefly outline this particular talk. There's 5 sections to it. The first one is what it's like to be a teenager these days. Second part is what it's like to parent a teenager these days. The third part is all about this narrative we have about adolescence, and is it really helpful or maybe not? And the fourth part is teenage angst, fact or fiction. I have some thoughts about that, and I wanted to share them with you. I'm not so sure that it is as biologically determined as we've kind of been taught. And then the fifth one is really applying all these ideas and the information I'll be sharing with you to parenting and to counseling and to educating to see how we can really help these teenagers because it's a difficult road ahead for them. Okay, so growing up is screen saturated, part 1. What it's like to be a teenager in America's 2020s. Well, first we can just pull up this whole thing with stressors. And I put this up here because I just wanted to give an idea of the kinds of stressors that kids are facing. Most of you know most of these, but there are occasionally people who will say, look, my kid looks good on paper, he's got a good school, good family, supportive parents, blah, blah, blah. What's she got to be stressed about? Well, we do hear that. And it's like, well, some of those things maybe. I mean, it's off the charts for a lot of kids. And, sorry. It's just off the chart. So I wanted to kind of preface things with that. But let's get on with the obvious kinds of things. That's not it. Okay, well, I'm just going to leave that there for now. Obvious, the explosive growth of social media and electronics in our kids' lives. Well, in everybody's life, really. And the hijacking of our kids' minds by that. By this big machine that's really just feeding itself. I mean, they talk about unintended consequences in Silicon Valley. Yeah, well, I think they had a very good idea about the monster they were creating. They just wanted to create it. But this whole machine of electronics and so forth has just robbed a generation of kids of their creativity, of their patience, of imagination, of so many things. And I think it's robbed, there are a generation of kids growing up without ever knowing pleasures of reading, for instance, pleasures of solitude, pleasures of quieter things. We talk a lot about getting our kids to get off electronics, get off their phones, but they need us to help them with that. Because if you say, put down your phone, go find something to do, go expand your mind, they'll look at you like, yeah, tell me again about the good life before the iPhone came with glazed eyes. That's what we always try to tell them about. But they do need help. They're so used to being entertained, they really don't know how to go out and explore the world, which means they need parents or other family members or close friends who will do that with them, which is very inconvenient for parents who are working and the weekend comes and they don't want to go into the city to do something. But I think we have to realize that we're going to have to be grossly inconvenienced in order to keep our kids' lives from shrinking too much. They're already so small. So I want to say things like, I don't know, if you're used to going out to eat at the sports bar all the time, try something different. Go find Lebanese food. Go find Bolivian food, if there is anything like that around here. What about escape rooms? What about dog shows? What about cafes and shows? Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. Bring your kids to look at medical oddities and skulls. It's really kind of a cool place. It's a little bizarre, but it's human oddities and skeletons and stuff. But that's different. You take a kid there, it's like the world is bigger. We can look at all these different things. Archery. Just don't let your kids' lives get so small. Now, there are kids who really do enjoy different activities, but they have to be the right ones, okay? Because there are a lot of activities that are not considered the right ones these days. The social judgment in schools and the competitiveness for who's popular and who's not is so steep that kids don't want to take a chance on being that kid who's the loser. So what happens? You have girls quitting things like gymnastics. I don't know why that's not cool when you're in middle school, but that's what kids often drop, or girls especially. What do boys drop? Reading. They drop reading, because that's not cool. Of my 3 sons, one was like this. He, in 6th grade, starting middle school, he was reading at the 10th grade level. By the end of 6th grade, he was reading at like 7th grade level. Why? No books for him anymore. He loved books, he hated sports, but being somebody who loved books and who was not athletic, that's a real double whammy. And that's a hell of a way to start off 6th grade. So he couldn't do anything about the sportiness, but he could do something about being a reader, which is to ditch the books. which is what he did. But he did a course correction because now he's an English language arts teacher in middle school. So I find that kind of funny. And then you have all the drinking and you have all the weed and you have kids getting high before and during and after school, and they get high with their friends, they get high by themselves. Doesn't matter. Maybe they're self-medicating. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they're just trying to get some reprieve from the stress in their life. But the problem is, between that and all the hours on the phone and everything, they're not developing the emotional skills, the social skills, the intellectual skills that they're going to need in those years to advance in a healthy way toward young adulthood. They're stunting their own growth, and one of the problems is that we can't talk to them about it because nobody misses what they never had. They haven't had those things. They haven't had the pleasure of kind of almost feeling or seeing yourself think with such acuity and dexterity. It's like, oh, wow, my brain's really working now. It's not pleasurable. They're not aware of it. So go try talking to them about it. They're just, again, you're just going to get kids looking at you with glazed eyes. Yeah, tell me about the iPhone again. But sadly, those are the things you're going to need: critical thinking, perspective taking, accountability, making oneself responsible. And then there are the skills that they're the skills that don't develop because kids aren't really going out and about. They're not trying new things. And so, and also you have the enabling assistive parents who don't like seeing their kids in distress. So they order for them at restaurants. They do all these things. Think about how many kids you know who cannot order for themselves at a restaurant. There are a lot. If they can order, but the order is wrong, they can't send it back because they're just too uncomfortable to do that, so they'll eat it or whatever. Okay. Think about all the kids who can't pick up the phone and make a doctor's appointment for themselves. They're still having their parents do it when they're in school, when they're in college. Or how about the kid who doesn't know what to do, how to resolve a disagreement with a friend or an employer because they're so used to either just blocking or quitting. And so that's our job, is to help them better navigate these situations so they have these skills that they're going to need. How the heck are you going to be excited about leaving home and going off to school if you don't even feel good about how you navigate the day now? No wonder why these kids are anxious, right? I remember talking a while back with, it was kind of a sheltered 18-year-old girl who was about to go off to college. And she was saying how she hasn't been to a lot of different places, and I was talking with her, and her mom was in the room too, kind of about how one develops or cultivates a sense of worldliness and confidence in the world. And I said, you know, you got to go out and do a lot of different things. And somehow it came up that she'd never ridden the train. And her mom says, I haven't either. And I said, okay, you know what? Here's what I want you to do. I want the two of you to go to the SEPTA station near where you live, buy 2 tickets, get on, and get off at a town that you don't know really well, like Narberth, I don't know. I want you to wander around that town till you get lost. Then I want you to find your way back to the train station again and take the train back home, because that is going to do a lot more for your daughter's preparedness for college than any conversation we're going to have here in this office today. Get her out, show her around, and show her how to do these things. I mean, conversation can only go so far, but when we think of what these kids need, like specific things, to be able to function well as an adult, they may need a little bit of us leading them through some of those activities. But what are kids seeing when they look ahead? Well, they don't like it. Whatever they're seeing, a lot of them aren't liking it. They're seeing a world that they're not thrilled to inherit. And why would they be? There's so much conflict, vitriol, wars all the time, people starving. It's not pretty. What about the climate, for anyone who's willing to listen? Will they even want to have kids one day? That's the things that they wonder about. Young adulthood, to so many kids, looks like a cluster of unwelcomed, massive responsibilities and stress, money worries, all these negative things. Why so ugly? Here's what I think. I think it looks that way because they took a look at us, a generation of parents who work too hard, play too little, argue too much, drink too much, all these things. They look at us struggling with our adult lives, and then they're like, thanks, I'm good. Don't want it. Can you blame them? It's not very pretty. So I think part of it is, how can we show adolescents a better adulthood? How can we show them the parts of adulthood that are not like that are not miserable and overly stressed, but are real pleasant? So I think we could do that, but here's the thing. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking, a lot of people are going to think that means, okay, I'm going to tell them success stories. I'm going to tell them what I did well as an adult or how I managed to feel good about this. And I'm like, no. Adults love to tell success stories. They just really like it, feels good. We think that we're motivating kids, we think that we're inspiring them, but it's really just a lecture disguised in a story most of the time. I think instead we should be telling stories about what we found hard to do as young adults, and maybe we were able to get over it or not. My sister was 21 years old. Sorry, just everything dropped and now I can't find. My sister was 21 years old before she could order her first food. And you know what? She had to go to Europe to do it because over there nobody would do it for her. Nobody would do it for her. Here's another, here's another story you could give. That question, let's say I'm telling about the question, about this story about this person who couldn't order for herself. It's a great segue to a question you might ask your own kids, like, you know what, is there something that Dad and I do, or that we probably don't need to do anymore, or maybe we shouldn't even be doing anymore? What do you think? That's a beautiful question. It opens up that whole thing, because your kids might be like, yeah, get out of my book bag. Get your hands out of my book bag, or you don't need to do this or that for me. And that would be a great thing. Here's another story. Tell an adult who, coming out of college, let's say, she's planning her first trip, first weekend getaway, and it's an utter disaster. Okay, but she doesn't care because it's her disaster. And she doesn't mind, and she tries to do it again, and it gets better and better, and now she's a travel agent. I don't know. But I think these are the stories that kids need to hear from us, because not only do they need to know that they're struggling, they need to know that they don't have to have it all figured out before they leave. Because that's the other worry that I think about when preparing kids. We're going to help them be responsible, accountable, perspective-taking, all that stuff. That stuff is important, but the skill stuff, they don't have to have all that down pat. Because for anybody who feels they need to be totally ready to leave the house when they're an adult, nobody's ever going to leave, because nobody ever feels ready enough. So here's the second part, and this has to do with parenting in the 2020s. I don't think it's gotten any easier for parents to parent their teenagers than it is for teenagers to grow up during this time. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, there are these three factors: broadening informalities between the generations. This has been happening for, I don't know, a couple of decades, but we're really talking about kids adopting this very casual way of talking to their parents at home, sometimes bordering on disrespect, something like that. I'm often sitting with families, first appointment, in 15 minutes, I stop the conversation and I say, oh my God, guys, you're talking as if y'all are roommates. And sometimes the mom will say, that's it, that's exactly what it feels like. Look, we're all roommates. And the dad says, yeah, my son's calling me bro, what's up with that? But that is happening in a lot of families. And on the one hand, yes, it could be funny, it could seem innocuous, but it's really not, because I think it's generational boundaries that really hold our customs and our protocols in place. And so when we let that blur a little bit, I think it's an opportunity for things to get a little loose around respect for, adults, respect for anybody, and just sort of a change in parental authority, a little diminishment of parental authority where kids start saying like, well, I have the veto power, or, you didn't ask for my opinion about this. It could be a problem. The other thing that happened, oh wait, there's this great scene in the TV series Parenthood. I don't know if you watched it, it's so good. Anyway, 16-year-old Hattie has a boyfriend. She brings her brand new boyfriend home. The home is not only her immediate family, but home is like her extended family, like it's a lot of people. So she brings this boy home, Steve, and he immediately starts talking to her parents using their first names. And you see everybody at the table kind of eyeballs looking like, oh boy. And then the brother-in-law whispers to his wife, it took me 5 years before I dared call your mother by the first name. But, this stuff is happening. So we have to be aware. What's the second thing that made it hard to parent now than before? I think teenagers' total appropriation of electronics. I mean, they just took them over. And here we are, adults, on the sidelines, trying to look in. Hey, what are y'all talking about? What do you have going on? And we're not privy to this dialogue among youth, which, of course, can go in all kinds of directions, not all of them real pretty. Remember Lord of the Flies? Okay? You have a group of boys, they're stranded on an island, there are no adults around, bad things happen. And I think it just underscores that things can get pretty dark when there are no grown-ups in the room. And that's what we have often with internet now and kids. The third thing is this infusion, this idealization of adult culture by mainstream culture. It used to be that the main dominant culture was that of the adults, and youth was kind of on the periphery, and there was some crossover. But more recently, I think there's this incredible infusion of a very heady pop culture that's now really dominating the social and the social landscape for all of us. So now we're a little bit more marginalized, and in terms of fashion and entertainment and music, things that used to be on the periphery are now mainstreamed. And so it has a lot of people wondering, like, well, wait a minute, maybe, these kids know so much, maybe they're right, because not only the youth is idealized, but their knowledge base too. And so a lot of parents struggle with that. It's led to this increased visibility of youth and of their voices too. And so with that combination of all these three factors, I think what we've come upon is, one, a very strong empowerment of youth, and two, a collective loss of confidence among American parents. How many people here have seen, in working with clients or just in your own families, the credibility and confidence of parents diminishing? Okay, yeah, I don't know, I meet with a lot of parents and they speak to this, and they speak to having kind of lost their compass. They don't know where to go, they're second-guessing themselves, they don't trust their judgment, they may not trust their decision-making, they wonder, what's normal these days? What are the new red flags? My daughter tells me that if I make her do her chores, her depression's going to get worse. Is she right? Who do I ask? Here's something else that gets tricky in parenting. Knowing how to balance our need to express compassion for kids and for the stressors that they have with the need to hold them accountable. It gets very blurry. It's the same task that therapists have too. Compassion and asking for accountability for the person's choice and the impact of those choices on other people. Because someone will say, my son, he's got ADD, so is it okay that I still remind him in high school to bring his uniform to school? Or my daughter has anxiety, is it still okay that I'm having the school change her classes to make sure she has a friend in every class? Or my kid has low-level autism, is it okay that I give him the bye with regard to social courtesies and allow him to interrupt and kind of take over the conversation? Is that okay? Is it not? These things are hard enough when kids don't have some kind of disability or challenge with them. And it gets really hard when it's muddy like that. Here's the third part. It has to do with this cultural narrative. I don't know how helpful it is. All those descriptions of teenagers that I had in the beginning of the slide, the negative ones, yeah, we do see them. They're true, they happen. But when we're asked how to account for this, I would say most people would say hormones, puberty, the immature brain that doesn't really develop fully until mid-20s, those kinds of things. What else? Other things that people, attribute to that? Besides puberty, hormones, immature brain? Anything else you hear? Okay, we'll just stick with those. They're good enough. So if we're thinking that these changes happen, okay, we know that they happen, it's understood, and so we could figure that all kids who are going through puberty are going to have these things happen. And if we believe that hormones, immature brain, and so forth are behind some of the unbecoming behaviors that adolescents show us, okay, that's a problem because now it's almost like adolescent angst and generational conflict is a fait accompli. Because they're going to have those changes cause these problems, so now what do? There's no workarounds. To me, this just sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay? Because you have parents who are really expecting their kids to become irresponsible or disrespectful when they turn 12, 13, 14. And then when kids oblige, parents react not with any kind of correction, but with a resigned accommodation. Oh yeah, this is adolescence, this is teen, I thought this was going to happen. So we have this self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but I just want to mention these other liabilities with this whole narrative. The narrative that tells us that when kids go through puberty, they become unrecognizable and insufferable to rear. It discourages parents from addressing a kid's real problems because it's very easy to dismiss withdrawal or depression or anger or moodiness as just typical teen behavior. There was a teenager that I saw, and he said for years he had been trying to get his parents to take him seriously and get him therapy, but they kept saying, oh, you're just a teenager. All teenagers are moody. All teenagers get sad. The second thing that's problematic with this whole narrative is that it promotes divisiveness between the generations because us versus them mentalities grow splendidly in a culture where parents are repeatedly warned that once your kid becomes a teenager, he's going to start changing his behavior and become irresponsible, moody, lazy, all that stuff, right? Not going to want anything to do with you, not going to want to talk with you. And the third liability is that it really encourages adults to set the bar low for teenagers because they're not expecting them to be any better than this stereotype projects them to be. So the bar gets low and we expect less and then they do less. And then that just reinforces this narrative that they can't do a whole lot. But there's a great danger in dismissing unacceptable behavior as typical teen behavior, which is what we see. I actually wrote an article saying, ban these 3 words, typical teen behavior. Just get rid of them. Because what's happened is that it's allowed us to normalize all these behaviors that they show up in teenagers, but do they have to show up in teenagers? Are they biologically determined? I don't think so, but we say they'll just grow out of it, or I'll just batten down the hatches for now and resurface when everything's over with. But here's where this becomes a problem, and this is the fourth part. Teenage angst, fact or fiction. A lot of people will push back and say, well, come on, Janet, this is, we teenagers act like that. I started writing about this topic about 15 years ago when I was writing The Last Boys Picked, because I was wondering how much is really biologically determined and how much is a function of other forces. Okay? So I'm going to read part of this quote, because thinking that teenage angst is this self-fulfilling prophecy that's disguised as developmental theory, and it lulls parents into complacency with their adolescents' bad behavior. Adolescents really don't have to be all that moody. They don't have to be defiant. They don't have to be rude. But people say, no, come on, that's, they're just wired that way. And I want to say, no, they're not. They go there because we let them. And so that's something maybe we could discuss during the panel in terms of, where do people fall on this continuum of how much is behavior really from biologically determinants and how much from other things, such as our own role in some of the challenges that we face with adolescents. Okay? But some people are going to say, well, hang on, Janet, because, there's all this research saying, there are real changes. The adolescent brain and the adult brain, they're very different. Of course they're different. They're very different. And neuropsychologist Dan Siegel has done terrific work in this area showing us how there are significant structural and physiological differences between the adult brain and kids' brains or teenagers' brain. This is a great book, by the way, Brainstorm, about understanding the adolescent brain. It's interesting because he wrote it for both adults and teenagers. And I was reading the book and I was thinking, I'm not so sure how that worked out. But anyway, that was his intent. But yeah, he's written about all these things and says that these changes give rise to the things that we see in teenagers that are positive, like the search for novelty, which we don't see as much anymore, creative exploration, we also don't see as much, preference to be with peers, that we do see. So all those things, yes, they come out of the brain changes. But nowhere that I've seen does it say that these changes during puberty lead to rude behavior or disrespectful behavior or messy or smelly, which are some of the things on that list, or egotistical behavior. No, I think those are from other things. Because saying your teenager can't control his temper or his foul mouth is because his hormones are raging, it's a very different conversation than the one Dan Siegel is having with us. Right. Okay. Very different. Because a teenager who's impulsive or dysregulated, maybe that kid has trouble dealing with some bad news. Maybe a concert was canceled or something, and he freaks out for a little bit. Problems with time management and planning. But that kid is coming from a very different place than a 17-year-old boy who walks inside his house and shoves his younger brother out of the way because he can. And very different place from a 16-year-old girl who tells her mom to F off when told to hand over her phone. That's not adolescence. That's just really bad behavior. And I worry that the two have gotten conflated. When those are normalized, it allows the research on brain health to be hijacked in order to corroborate our stereotypes about adolescence. Okay, people grab part of the research, brains are different, teenage, it's not developed till mid-25. That's why my kid's disrespectful to me. No, that may be why your kid does a lot of things, but I'm not so sure it's why he's disrespectful. I think that may have something to do with the dynamic, okay? Because the result of that is the vindication of adults who to date have really enjoyed believing that their experiences with teenagers that leave them powerless, or feeling uncomfortable or baffled are developmentally predetermined, that they're universal in nature, and that they're inherently unavoidable, meaning it's not their fault. When a father can look at his teenage son, who's moping around the house or sullen, and think, he's just being a normal teen, he's 15, why would I expect him to do anything different? There's just no reason for him to explore any further, find other reasons. But maybe the kid is depressed. Maybe the kid doesn't like how the father treats his mother. Maybe anything. But you know what? No one is ever going to find out because there's no incentive to do it, and it's not even something that crosses people's minds. My whole point here is that brain changes during adolescence may account for poor time management and stuff, but they aren't the main reasons why kids become rude or disrespectful, because those behaviors involve another person. But we're not looking at that. We're so focused on the teenager, we got to pull the lens out a little bit and say, wait a minute, these things are happening in a dynamic with another person. If we want to understand adolescent behavior and help these kids, I don't think we can do it in isolation. We don't like to talk about what adults do that bothers kids, so we don't. But it happens. Kids feel patronized or belittled or dismissed. Most of the time, the adult is unaware. It's a quip, it's a sarcastic quip that undermines a kid's faith in himself. It's some kind of constant criticism. Oh, I'm just trying to help, these sorts of things. But they're a lot quieter in how they do it, adults. You know, it's under the radar, they say, and the kid feels it and responds ballistically. And then everyone says, oh, look at the teenager, it's just another crazy teen. I think we have to look at the whole picture. So I think there's going to be some pushback on this, the notion that adults may have a role to play in some of the challenges that they have with adolescents. And I bring this up and emphasize it because I think until we can resolve some of this and get these relationships more aware, more transparent, more curious about our kids, I think we're going to have trouble helping them. We're going to have trouble helping them to hear our advice or whatever we want to say about growing up that will help them feel better. Because I think once you have a fixed explanation for the behavior of other people, you really don't have to think a whole lot about your own. So, okay. So this is the last section here. And it's kind of applying, okay, so given these different things that I've been talking about, what does that mean for how we can parent and counsel and educate in such a way that our kids do feel better supported and feel better about the future that they have coming? Well, let's start with parenting. That us versus them mentality that I mentioned before, this just perpetuates the conflict because, of course, parents are just expecting their teens to not want to be close to them or talk with them, and then that gets conflated with adolescence. Here's something I want to say. I think the truth of the matter is that kids really do want to talk with their parents, and they really crave engagement. I sit with kids all day long, with teenagers, and I can say this unequivocally, that despite all the talk about kids wanting to separate and individuate, they want connection. They just don't know how to ask for it, and I don't think we're offering it in a way that always feels good. That's another distortion of this developmental theory about separation. You know, a lot of parents will say, well, my kid's just doing that separation thing. She's growing up. She wants to be her own person. That's why she's not talking to me. Well, I'm not so sure about that. There might be other reasons why she's not talking to you, but no one's ever going to bother to ask as long as we can dismiss it as part of what happens. So why does it appear that so many teenagers don't enjoy what they want talking with their parents? Well, it's not really enjoyable. A couple of things. Number one, this is where we can make a change. There's just too many questions. The whole thing is questions. They're not even good questions. They're questions about school or band or practice or what time I need to pick you up from lacrosse practice. So a lot of parents will say, how do I even start a conversation with my kid without asking questions? Because it's not like he's coming to me with anything. So I understand, but you know what? I think it's with teenagers that is the only place, there's no ledge here, so everything just keeps falling. I'm sorry. Of course, everything's out of order now. Hang on a second. This will just take me a second and I'll be ready to go. Okay, I think I found it. Anyway, do you know it's only with teenagers? Because if you think about how we approach conversations with our friends or family, we don't try and jumpstart these conversations with questions. We just say, hey, did I tell you about what happened to me yesterday? Or, hey, did you watch the Oscars? What did you think of Michael, Jordan's talk? Or it's only with teenagers. See, those are questions, but they're conversational questions. They're not like interrogations, and it's a big difference. But I think teenagers make adults a little nervous, and so they kind of stumble, like they're kind of hesitant to say the wrong thing, to start, because lots of times kids will just give a negative response because they can't stand the questions. I don't even answer the first one, said a teenager client of mine, because I know there are 20 more behind it. So I don't even go there, and I can't blame them. But what we can do, if you do need to ask a question, is check these out, because this is from an article, 100 questions to ask your teenager other than how's school. Okay? And there's a bunch of them up there that are kind of cool. And they're very creative. Then there's these. Then we have those. I mean, there's a bunch more, but I'm not going to go there. But I don't know, anyone see something that they like? Any of those questions, something that you would actually use? There are a couple of funny ones there, like how do I embarrass you, or I don't know. I just, we're always so guarded with our teenagers and not coming forward and being candid. This is just a beautiful introduction to a different kind of conversation. So there's this idea of too many questions. The other thing is to avoid hijacking a good conversation in order to make a point. This happens all the time. Here's an example. You have a kid who is excited to tell his father about the stool he's making in woodshop. So he comes home and he starts telling his dad all about it, and his dad's sort of like, looking, and the dad sees this opportunity to remind the kid about the bench for his Eagle Scout project that he hasn't done yet. So you know what happens? Face drops on the kid. He says, yeah, okay, whatever, and he goes up to his room. What does a father do? The father says, teens these days, what can you do with them? They just don't want to talk to us. That's why I say so much of it is the adult's not even aware. Father's not aware that he just hijacked what was a good conversation and turned it into a reminder, a point, and this and that, and this happens a lot. And if we could be more careful to just have the conversation, I think we do a lot better with our kids. Then there's a couple of other ways to make communication, conversation better. Make sure you're a part of it. So many conversations are just one-sided. It's just the parent trying to find out more about the teen. But you know how many teenagers can't even describe what their parents do for a living? It's like, I think it has something to do with insurance. He works in a hospital, that much I know. But a lot of them, their parents are just, it's all about the business of parenting, what time they get picked up and so forth. And I say to parents, show them other dimensions of yourself. Like, for instance, do your kids know what commercials make you cry? If you had $100,000, do they know what charities you would give that money to? How about where you might want to travel that you never did? Do they know these things? A lot of parents will be like, no. And I'll be, why not? They're not secrets. They would give you color. They would give you color. And it also is inviting to kids, and it also supports the relationship as a teenager gets older and needs less parenting, like the business of parenting stuff. Then they get to know the parent as a person, and there's a lot of traction there for a relationship. The other thing I'm going to say that's really important that we can do better is listening to our kids, listening to them. Especially to the things that you don't want to hear if you are lucky to get that information. And I say that because it's good information for parents to hear from their kids what they're not happy about. Lots of time it gets shut down. Here's an example. There's one girl I was working with years ago. She tried to tell her mom that she didn't like being at home as much anymore because there was so much arguing. Instead of inviting a bigger conversation about that by saying something like, oh, really, is it worse now? Or, oh God, that makes me really sad. Or, I think you're right, I'm sorry, I gotta think about that. What did the mom say? Mom said, well, I'm sorry, we're just terrible parents, which just shuts everything down. Conversation's done. That one and all the ones they might have had the kid felt more respected and listened to in the first place. What is kids supposed to do with that? They don't even need a solution. They just need to know that you take them seriously. It's not like the kid's looking for a solution to the problem of so much conflict. But if the mom is able to say, you're right, I think there is. I got to talk to dad about it. I got to talk to this about it, or something. I got to think about it even. That's really great, and it softens kids a lot to be heard like that. Here's another example. 17-year-old girl. This is a long time ago I was seeing. Really depressed, very disrespectful around the house. Parents have been trying to find out for a long time. Why? What's the matter? She doesn't say anything. But one day, family therapy, parents are in there, she's in there, and she blurts out, I just want to be a normal family. Beautiful question. I was like, yeah, let's go. But no. The mother responded not with, I had no idea that you thought of us as not a normal family, or what do not so-called normal families have that we don't, or what would be different if we were a normal family? What does the mom say? She says, normal? I'm not going to yell, but what do you mean not normal? What's your definition of a normal family anyway? And I thought, honey, you're never going to find out now. You're not going to find out about that or a lot of things, because that was just a beautiful opening, and it's there no longer. But I think if we invite our kids to really talk with us about things that matter, here's a beautiful question for you, kid. I know you like talking to your friends, but I just got to know, is there something I'm doing that has you stay up in your room so much that I could change? Or here's another question. Is there something that I get so defensive about that you don't feel you could bring it up with me? I wondered about that. These are gorgeous questions, and kids will really appreciate the gesture. And they're also the kinds of things that can reveal some of the conflict and anguish or longing or resentments underneath those conversations that don't stay conversations because they deteriorate into arguments too quickly. It's a great way to reveal some of that. What about therapy? How would this help us here? Well, you know, the most popular article I ever wrote was Why Teens Hate Therapy. And it was written in Psychotherapy Network a long time ago. There's a link to it in the slideshow. But yeah, we know that adolescence has changed, okay? But therapy, not so much. It's kind of been lumbering along for decades in the same way, with a lot of the same old strategies and old ideas and old practices that don't really suit today's teenager. Today's teenager is very socially savvy. They're very informed about mental health. They're also very good at picking out the adults who play to their favor, and they don't like that. So when in graduate school, we learned, or at least I learned, how to join clients supposedly with this platform of empathy and being nice and being non-judgmental and all that. All those things are great, but when that's our calling card to kids who are very savvy socially, we just end up chasing them. It's not very appealing. Nowhere was there a conversation about how we can show up that kids would actually want to talk to us. And that's how I get to this question, which is one of the, common ones, which is, how do I get this kid to open up to me? We hear all the time. We hear it all the time. But I think this question is emblematic of what it is that we struggle with so much with kids. Because I think a much better question is, how can I become a more compelling and a more relevant person so that this kid actually wants to talk to me? I don't have to chase him. Because that changes everything. You have a kid talking, anything is possible. And that's been my focus for the last 35 years, an approach to working with kids that just feels more respectful for them and practical and relevant. And I call it modern teen therapy. And I think of it as a user-friendly approach that's big on building robust, warm relationships with kids and big, bouncy conversations that travel. That's how I would characterize it. And some of this stuff is really practical, direct. I mean, kids sometimes just need help. There was one girl who came in and she'd gotten in a fight with a friend. The friend wasn't talking to her. She was really distressed about this. I said, come on, pull out your phone. Let's figure out what to say. And I tried to help her figure out what to say and then respond to the person. So somebody might say, well, Janet, you know, did she want you to help her like that? Or Janet, what about going and exploring her difficulties in responding to friends? Or her difficulties maybe in keeping friends. And you know what? We can get to all that. That's all easy to circle back to. Hey, remember that day we were talking, came in with the phone? I was curious. You know, that seemed really difficult for you to come up with somebody and say, what's going on? Because we could do that then. That day, that girl needed her best friend back. And that's what I was trying to do. So it's just an example of how I try to make it very, very practical. There's another piece that I think is really important in therapy that we don't, I don't know that we talk about it a lot. I don't know that it's incorporated so in a very obvious way in a lot of therapies, and that is accountability and holding our clients accountable for the choices they're making and their impact on other people. I think a lot of therapies are a little bit soft on this. I think we're still stuck in the sort of like, we gotta be really nice, and how many times do you get a referral from maybe somebody and they say, you know, we were seeing somebody else for therapy for a while, and she was really nice, but you hear a lot. Nice is, I don't know, nice is just half a relationship, and kids know that's not a real relationship, it's just a nice half, and the contract feels wrong, and so kids spook, because if it's all nice and supportive, it just, kids know that they need to be held accountable. And interestingly, because some people say, well, I can't do that unless I have a secure, really good therapeutic relationship with this kid. And I want to say, no, sometimes the therapeutic relationship develops because you do that. Because you've now become credible and the kid knows that you're balancing the support and everything with accountability. And it's not a matter of getting kids to like own up to their problems or agree to work on them at all. It's just about ascribing intention. That's it, ascribing intention, understanding a teenager's decisions and behaviors as those of choice, not something that he couldn't help. And this is my way of kind of elevating the idea of adolescents that they really can be so much more responsible than we're allowing them to be. There's no criticism, there's no judgment, there's no arguing. I don't even care if the kid agrees or doesn't agree with me. All this intervention is about, or this part of the therapy, is me saying, I don't want to have to pretend that you didn't hear it, that you didn't say it, that it was just a joke, or that you didn't mean it. You can keep saying that. I'm not going to challenge that. I just don't want to have to believe it if I don't believe it to be true. I want to speak to the truth in the room without demanding that the kid do anything differently. And that's how you can get kids to sit a little bit with behaviors that maybe aren't so great, but they don't have to chase the idea out because you're not saying do anything about it. You're just saying, you know, I know you're saying you couldn't help it. I don't know. I'm not so sure. That's all I would say, and then I would go on. But it allows us to talk about things that they would otherwise feel more defensive about talking. The other thing, I think it's helpful in terms of preparing kids for their future because honestly, it's kind of a glimpse of what they're going to see in the larger world, where they're not protected or shielded by parents and friends who have made accommodations over the years to bad behaviors or bad habits, things that college roommates and future employers will not. That's how I think it could be very helpful with that. So to wrap up with this piece, I just want to say that I do struggle a little bit with all the acronyms that are part of today's dialogue about therapy, ACT, CBT, DBT, all those. And I worry that things are getting a little mechanical with that. I want to believe that therapists are being taught how to just do really good therapy, just sound therapy with a connective tissue that holds it together, that has a through line, that is shepherded with intention and confidence, not just a bunch of strategies, oh, let's try this, let's try that, but something that feels whole and that will give somebody confidence that you are able to help them. In a lot of the workshops and sort of CE programs, it's a lot of the acronyms, and I keep going back to this other, I don't know, I just think that's the place to start with kids, not with protocols or worksheets or manuals, but, I don't know, with like a relationship and a conversation that matters enough to a kid that she wants to come back and talk to me again. So the last part here is the education piece. So what can it tell us about how we can educate kids in a way? How can we include in that ways to help them feel better about their future? Well, here's a not so fun fact, okay? 2019, the Washington Post reported that students in high achieving schools are now an at-risk group behind poverty, trauma, and discrimination. Like, that's really bad. That's really bad that we're even including, you know, stress, educational stress in those categories, but it is, because researchers found that these kids are going crazy with competition. But here's the thing, I think it's, if we want to reduce stress, we could jump in right there, but it's not easy in our community, because our communities here in the vicinity are very competitive. It's everywhere, it's around every corner, it's in sports, okay? It's in school, it's in popularity. It's really hard to get away from it. And I think changing the standards around achievement in relation to healthy emotional development, I think it'll be a hard conversation to move forward, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't start to have it. Most kids aren't connected to school, certainly not to the content of what they're learning. We could blame electronics and social media all we want, but to compete, we're gonna have to compete for their attention, and we better bring our A game, which to me means stuff that's more relevant to kids, that they want to know about, that they need. I had a 12-year-old girl who's telling me, she goes, the best class I ever had in math was the one where my teacher taught us about student loans. She said, I can't use it yet, but I will. And it was nice to hear something that I'll actually be able to use one day. I mean, it's hard because there's curriculum, I understand that. But are there places where we can squeeze in conversations about how to say no to a friend who's a little pushy, or how do you rent an apartment, these kinds of things. The other thing I want to say about education and stress and prep for the future is about college, because we have so many parents and educators and guidance counselors and family members and grandpa and Aunt Betty. They're all repeatedly asking high school students, what do you want to study in college and what do you want to be when you grow up for the rest of your life? I'm like, oh God, what a question. And now people are asking middle schoolers, and we're creating this massive anxiety among kids. Also, have you made sure to load up on all the things that are good in your transcript that are going to give you the opportunity to get into a good school? Okay, come on. There are 4,000 accredited universities in the United States, and there's 2,000 more if you want to include tech and vocational schools. People talk about these good schools as if there are only 7 in the entire country. Like, where are the bad schools that people are worried about their kids getting into? I don't know. It's incredible, incredible pressure. I ended up writing an op-ed about it because I was really concerned about stressing out these kids with all that stuff. And I'm thinking, like, if I were a college admissions counselor, I don't know, I mean, maybe this is not true, but I'm thinking I would rather have the kid who has a few genuine things in a thinner transcript than the kid who's padded it with all kinds of stuff. And that's how we transfer values to our children in these practical questions and decisions about everyday life, okay? Do I pad my transcript? Do I not? And I would be the parent who said, do not pad it. You do things that have meaning to you, because for me, authenticity trumps all the other stuff. And we'll find a college that can recognize that in you. But I don't know, I think a lot of people, well, I don't know. I mean, there's this other thing too, if you think of all the teenagers whose path to college is littered with their beloved, but supposedly impractical activities, right? Design, fashion, photography, creative writing, music engineering, all these kinds of things. Don't we need people like this in our lives? Okay? We're all telling kids, drop that, be an engineer, be this, be that, be something where there's a straight line from college to jobs. I don't know. I think we need more color, more music in the world, and I think think we're going to get, I think some parents would say, sure, Janet, I think that's a great idea. Just as long as it's not my kid, because my kid needs a job when he gets out of school, and so I'm telling him to give up all the things that he loves. But that's just how I feel. The other thing, too, with that is that in pressing this whole thing about, what do you want to be when you're 18, 19, not only does it create incredible anxiety, we are robbing our kids of the opportunity to see a more differentiated world before they have to choose what they want to do, and a more differentiated self. Okay? So basically, without that, asking kids to decide without that having happened kind of turns colleges into just dressed up trade schools. So yeah. So I am looking for all these things dropped. Okay, I'm just going to have to kind of wing it here. All right. So I've been talking a lot about families that struggle and teenagers that struggle and how we can help them feel more prepared and less stressed about the future. But I also want to say that there's a lot of beautiful moments. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful moments in parenting. There's beautiful therapy moments. There's beautiful moments between a teacher and a student. And I want to put our attention on that too. I mean, you guys are here. This stuff matters to you, and I really appreciate that. But these moments also have, I mean, those are some movies that I picked that demonstrate these beautiful moments. Everyone will have their different favorites. I just remember watching Ordinary People and wanting so much to have my own Judd Hirsch, who played the therapist in that movie. I thought he was phenomenal. I just was like, I want a therapist like that. But these moments happen in your homes. And maybe it happens where you're especially playful or especially warm or especially unguarded. Maybe it happens there. And take note of that, where you're not wedded to a particular outcome in the interaction. You're not trying to make a point. You're not trying to mind your kid. Maybe it's as simple as a gesture of respect, okay? That the kid picks up. The one thing that's missing from this narrative about adolescence, respect for the person of the teenager. And I think that's the greatest currency in a relationship between two people. And I think it's hard to get any authentic traction without it. And if we want to be heard by kids, then we need to be credible, and we can't be credible unless we're respecting the teenager who we're talking to. So maybe it's respect. Maybe it's that you were stunningly present, okay? I think people undervalue and underestimate the value of presence because it's something that is, not something that does. Parent might say, or teacher might say, what if I'm present, I'm not doing anything? Well, you're being with. And sometimes that's enough, particularly in our world where nothing and no one really stays still for too long. Presence is huge. My dear friend, my co-author on one of my books, once said to me that what kids really need is for parents to stop talking, to sit down on the floor next to their kid, and just wait to see what comes up. And I love that. And I knew then that we'd be best friends forever. And we are. And that's where I'm going to end it for now. So thank you very much for your audience. I'm looking forward. We'll do the panel. I guess we'll just transition and talk about that and the other things. I guess we have questions too from people who volunteered questions. So any questions about this material so far? We could just wait till the panel, I suppose. Yeah, let's just do that. Thank you. And I do want to thank, I really do want to thank Del Val's psychology department, Tracy, Matt, all you guys for putting this together. I want that one. No, I'm sorry. I want that one. No, I wanted this one. I would have fought you for it.
box of paper died over here. Looks like a box of paper just exploded over
I know.
here. That's all right. We live in chaos. Thank you so much, Dr. Adjet. Happy to have you and the rest here. Did you want to put your QR code up? I do want to raise the screen
yeah,
then so we
okay.
can see our lovely panel here.
Yep, there you go.
So we'll leave that up for a second for you all to grab if you want it, and we'll just look at each other awkwardly. This is so much like a classroom. I'm just standing around waiting for the phones to get put away. So while you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. For those of you who I don't know, I'm Dr. Matt Mutchler. I'm the chair of the psychology department here at Del Val, despite my agreement with Dr. Adjet that we don't need to be pressuring kids about college from middle school on, I will say please send your kids to major in psychology at Del Val, where we have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in counseling. Happy to talk with any of you more if you're interested. And thanks to those students who've come out tonight, both here in the room and streaming on the YouTube page. Yeah, that'll do for the bit. Here we have our panel that I will introduce hopefully in the right order and hopefully pronounce their names correctly. You're not sitting in the order that's on my form though, so I'm gonna have to improvise. So we'll start to my right with Dr. Allison Buskirk-Cohen. She's the director of the honors program and professor of psychology here at Del Val. Her research explores how interpersonal relationships shape well-being, highlighting the power of connection. She's a published author, editor, and international speaker on student success and development. Dr. Cohen, everybody. To her right is Dr. Heather Hopkins. She currently serves as the executive director of student services in the Centennial School District. She also teaches at the graduate level here at Del Val, as well as UPenn, where she's director of special education coursework and certification. That's a lot. She previously, I'm sorry I broke, but I wasn't done, spent 23 years as a special educator in PA public school system. Now we can clap for Dr. Heather Hopkins. To her right, we have Dr. Neil Brocksterman. Did I get that? First try. He's the assistant director of student services at the North Penn School District and has been for the past 25 years. Been there as a social studies teacher, assistant principal at the high school, and elementary school principal. He's a dedicated advocate for students with disabilities and mental health challenges, a passion that's shaped by his personal experience as a parent of 2 children on the autism spectrum. Dr. Brocksterman. And to his right is Kim Porter. She's the co-founder and executive director of Be Part of the Conversation, a nonprofit that helps families and communities better understand substance use, addiction, and behavioral health. As a parent of someone in long-term recovery, she uses her lived experience to provide peer support and reduce stigma. Kim Porter, everybody. I feel like you should do like a dance or something, all of you. And of course, we've already met Dr. Adjet. I should add that I am also a practicing couple and family therapist and father of 2 recent teenagers who are both away at college right now. And I've made both the mistakes and the good things that you talked about. So, you know, on a balance, it works out. So we'll take your questions. I was kind of jotting down things as we went, as Dr. Adjet was talking. I wonder if you all might talk a little bit about what you perceive to be the big worries of teens and parents of teens right now. Maybe we could start there. You have microphones, yeah? Okay. This is the part where you guys...
Okay. Because I'm coming from the substance use lane, I can say that, and we don't just talk about substance use, drugs and alcohol, we talk about process addictions as well. And so what I'm seeing a lot of from the families that we support is a need for young people to self-soothe using a substance, doom scrolling, pornography, FanDuel, sports betting. So those kinds of things that are just so readily available right now, and they're trying to foster resiliency in their young people, and they're really struggling with that, especially when the adults themselves are kind of struggling in a lot of those areas as well.
Yeah, So we're all doom scrolling also, right?
So I'll go ahead. I think, while I think it's existed pre-technology, I think our teens still struggle with that sense of not belonging and feeling being left out or missing something. I think that's only magnified with an online platform. So I think that is a consistent fear of theirs, a worry, and then sometimes that just leads to poor choices because we're seeking that belonging and crossing boundaries we thought we might not cross because we're still seeking that, wanting that sense to belong. So I think of, for example, many school districts participate in a what's called PACE survey, which looks at students' perceptions starting in 6th grade. It can go all the way to 4th. I think this year was the first year they piloted. So part of our work is also flipping the narrative. So I think some of our kids think, oh, all kids are doing X, Y, and Z, when a lot of their peers aren't. And there's some important data in there that are concerning trends about thoughts about harming ourselves and those things that we need to look at. But there's also positive trends where a large percentage of your peers are not engaged in vaping or whatever substance misuse might be, and trying to support kids with, you can be included in doing the positive things as well.
Great, thank you.
I taught for 23 years, and always in my head was finding that teachable moment and not letting a teachable moment pass by. And what I find working with families is that parents don't always take the parenting moment and they let it pass them by. And there's a lot of parenting moments that occur in the day-to-day world, in the morning routine. My husband always used to say what he misses the most about those weekend warriors when the girls were in field hockey and lacrosse were the car rides and the parenting moments that came up in the car ride. And it's really hard to be a teacher and remove yourself from that role that you play, because you're always thinking, did I miss something that we could have latched on to, we could have taken that to a different level or in a different direction. And I think as parents in today's world, we really have to find those parenting moments and capitalize on them and not let them go by, so that we can really just live and ruminate and work through all of that together.
Those were such beautiful responses. I think what I would add to that is I see a lot of attention focused on building resiliency. I know many schools are showing different programs about that, emphasizing it. I see it on social media all the time. But what I don't see as much is how hard it is when you're in the moment and how much it physically hurts. Because the opportunities for resilience happen when we're not doing well. So when our teen hasn't been selected for the team, or their art hasn't been selected for the show or the play or whatever it is, or when you've done poorly on a test, or when you haven't been selected for the internship you wanted, those moments hurt. And there are opportunities to build resiliency, to learn how to not give up, to keep pushing forward, to find other opportunities. But in the moment, they do not feel good as the teen, and it doesn't feel good as the parent. It physically aches. And so I think that we have an opportunity really as a society, as teachers, as educators, as clinicians, as friends and neighbors to one another, to try to find better ways to have those conversations and to support one another through them, because they are critical, but again, they're not easy.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. I think we need to appreciate how anxiety-provoking it is for kids to think about what happens after college. Because a lot of the traditional paths to security, status, financial security, stuff like that, aren't as clear anymore. It's changed. And then you have all these kids who are returning home after college and living at home, and so kids are like, well, I don't know, doesn't look very promising. I mean, it's, in reality, I don't know, I mean, of course, there are people who are really, really targeted on certain areas, and they're going from hell or high water. But I think for a lot of other kids, especially because, I don't know, I mean, I decided to become a psychologist when I was 23. I wouldn't have wanted to be doing what I thought I wanted to do when I was 17 or 18, for sure not. So, I don't know, I guess I think of college as more of an opportunity to learn about oneself. I'm big on liberal arts and humanities, and I feel like we're getting so far away from that. Everything's so rigid, and I don't know, I just wanted to put that out there because I think kids look at post-college and think like, oh, that doesn't look really fun, no one's getting jobs. You're gonna go home and live with mom and dad again in the basement, great.
Yeah, that was about 20 sessions of therapy with one of my most recent teenage clients, yeah. Thank you to all of you for that, for getting us started. I want to turn it over to all of you, and maybe we can take some questions. My esteemed colleague Chris over there has a microphone to make you feel self-conscious about holding it. Who's got questions? There we go. I knew I could count on you, Hugo. You don't need it, but for the YouTube, I think they might need you to need it.
Thank you. So I am a graduate student, and I am a father of 2 teenagers, so life is hard right now. But I do see glimmers of light in the interactions I have with them. We talked a lot about kind of negative stuff. What do you see as positive things that is happening with teenagers? The example that I come up with is special needs students, just run of the mill for them now. For when I was growing up, that was a big deal. So what comments do you have around the positives and the things that teens are doing well now?
I think someone mentioned, and it might have been you, kids are much more aware of mental health. They're aware of their peers. So I've seen many times where kids step up in powerful ways for their peers, saving lives, because they're not talking to an adult, they're opening up to that peer, and I think our teenagers are more educated on not to ignore that there's, like, I need to intervene, I need to do something to connect, support some. I can vividly remember just this year, I'm in a class doing an observation, and another young lady sitting next to me, probably not displaying the best classroom behavior, but she's venting loud enough for me to hear, I can't believe so-and-so was away all weekend down in Philadelphia. Didn't even call her mom. And like, without ratting on her friend to the principal, is letting me know and communicating. So I think those are the glimmers of like looking out for each other that is exciting for kids in the positive ways that, and they display lots of empathy, lots of positive things. As you were speaking, it reminded me, I need to sometimes remind kids of those positive things that they do.
I'll just add real quickly. I mean, I think teenagers are so much better than they're portrayed to be. This is why the whole narrative drives me crazy, because they're sort of, it's this fixed portrait that never evolves. And I just want to say, if we could do anything to put out like a more pro-adolescent kind of storyline behind them and recognize, I mean, just think of their expressions of, with their friends. They're loyal, they're empathic, they're very open-minded, all these qualities, and yet we have them pegged as, irresponsible and smelly. I'm like, I don't know. I just don't buy it. I think they're great to hang with.
I raised 2 teenage boys, they are smelly.
What's that? Okay, we'll go.
And to bridge this together, what I find, our kids, because we teach and we name everything for them now, so young kids know what it means to be empathetic. Whereas 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they might have displayed the characteristic of empathetic, but they couldn't tell you what it was. You could say to many young children, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy, and they can tell you. I think I was 21 when I realized what the difference between empathy and sympathy was. They know grit, right? That's a word that they know. They know resilience, and they know these words young. And the power of attaching names and definitions to qualities and teaching that at a young age and seeing kids maybe not always implement those characteristics, but they can call it out and they can have a conversation about it is a far path that we've come down in the last 20 years.
And I'll just add one more, perhaps unusual take on social media. I think there are some benefits it offers today's teens as well. One of my favorite questions to ask a teen is to ask them, who are some of your favorite people to follow? What are some of your favorite accounts to follow? And to ask them to share those with me and to tell me why. And it's really pretty incredible. So they're exposed to a wide range of worldviews, ideas about just everything related to the environment, the role of AI in the future, fashion, the impact of that on the environment, just all these different aspects, and even the silly things. So trying to understand a teen's sense of humor. What do they think is funny versus what makes them cringe in horror? It's fantastic. And so I think that can open up an incredible opportunity for learning, but also as a way to establish deeper connections with adults.
I'll just add that I think I definitely do this myself. We kind of blame the pandemic on a lot of things, the way our kids are struggling right now. But I do think it ripped the cover off a lot of emotions for people, and it really, as you were saying, Neil, to express some of those challenges that people are having on social media is pretty beautiful that they have the language for it and the capacity now to share that. I do think that isolation, as challenging as it was and as beautiful as it was for some people who recognize, wow, I guess I really am an introvert. Some people kind of like that isolation, but it helped to sort of see. And I also noticed that there was a different dynamic happening with parents and kids because parents were working from home a lot more and probably continue to since we had that big shift. So maybe there's more dialogue. I think that's what I'm hearing a lot from the families we work with. So hopefully there's some good things happening there.
I think that after COVID and the pandemic, their kids really brought forward a national dialogue on mental health that continues to evolve, and I think that was a great outcome of that. Finally put it on the map. Parents took it more seriously.
And I'll pile on here as well, because something I noticed in my kids and many, but not all of their friends, along that lines of empathy is their awareness and acceptance of difference and identity and ability and whatnot, where like they have the language, they know the words, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is my friend, they're gay. Oh yeah, this is my trans friend. Oh yeah, this racist thing happened to my friend the other day at school and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like they're just there. And so I think that's a benefit we're seeing in kind of the culture among at least the kids that I've been spending time around.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm aware, I think we passed out some comment cards as well if people had questions they didn't want to talk into the microphone about. We'll have, I think I see Tracy on the move, come around and collect those if people want to give them in. And we have one up here, Chris, that maybe is willing to talk to you. So that's cool.
Hi. I have a question about screen time. I'm a parent to 2 teenagers and a preteen, and recently I had a conversation with my 14-year-old where he very calmly and respectfully advocated for more screen time on his phone. I have strict screen time limits, and he presented some evidence and really great facts about screen time, and he basically wants me to give him kind of more screen time at night in particular. It was a great conversation, and yet I find myself so hesitant to relax my limits. He's only 14, but at some point I'm not going to be monitoring his phone, right? So, help. Do you have any advice?
That's such a great question and also such a hard one. I love your approach and his approach there. So I think there's a few pieces there that are really key to highlight. One, that you have this relationship with him where he was comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, we have this boundary or this rule in our family, I'd like to change it. And that's something that makes sense with parenting. As our kids age, we have to make adjustments. The rules that made sense when they were 5 years old don't make sense when they're 7 years old, and so on. And then I love that he went and did this research. Did he have a slide deck for you? Okay, my team does like to present to me with a formal slide deck, but which is, again, just another fun change. But I think some questions to ask are, what happens with your teen when he's on screen time, and how is he using it? What does he mean by additional screen time? Would you be comfortable allowing more, but it has to come off at a certain time at night? Because some of the research does show us that the exposure to the blue light, and particularly on the small screen of a cell phone, is very different from what we would get if we're watching the TV, for example. And it can make it more difficult for us to then fall asleep, to have the deeper sleep that we need. So a lot of researchers and scientists will say that screen time really should end by about 10 o'clock for most teens. But there's, of course, some individual differences in there to consider. But one of the things, try it. So what would happen if you tried it on a weekend and see how it goes? Maybe that's a compromise you can make, where there can be a later screen time during the weekend versus the weekday. Maybe it's about, again, what does he want the later screen time for? What does he want to be doing with it? Is it messaging with friends? Is it watching videos? So again, I think kind of having more of that discussion, asking more of these questions, leaving space for him to explain to you what it is he's looking for, what it is he wants, and again, what makes the most sense for you as a family.
Another thing you could do is turn it into more conversation, where you could list the characteristics that you're concerned about. You're concerned about increased anxiety, because we know that scrolling, right, can really up our anxiety. Or you're concerned about, increased self-loathing, right, and what happens with that, and really almost create a document where weekly you talk about it. How are you feeling? How is your anxiety? What does it mean to feel anxious? Do you feel yourself getting a little bit more agitated the longer you're on the screen? Like having comparing and contrasting conversations as to when you've increased the screen time as opposed to before the increased screen time. And that also teaches your child to navigate all sorts of decisions from a comparing and contrasting before I chose to do this and after I chose to do it. So you're teaching problem solving as well.
Anybody else?
I agree that phone time and screens can really is really overused. However, I'm wondering where else do you want teens and preteens to be? Because the malls and stuff are being all shut down. They're a bunch of stores are being just completely taken away. Parks, it's especially in the city, it's really polluted. There's trash everywhere, etc. There's not many places that I can think of where many teens that I know at least would be willing to hang out as a group.
Yeah, so where can they be besides on screens? What's a good place, pro-social, good for development for teens to be spending their time?
So I think some of it starts with some hopefully modeling at home. I think we talked a little bit about coming up with examples, and you're going to have to be intentional about teaching what do you do if there's no screen. My own kids, I probably had guilt, if I self-reflect, a little bit of guilt about how much screen time I allowed them when they were younger. But board games became important for us, playing games as a family. So I think if that's modeled for them, hopefully then they translate that into, hey, if they are spending time with some peers and they don't want to all of them be, as they would call iPad kids, then they have examples of things they can do, whether it's playing cards, favorite of ours is Mexican Train, like knowing tangible examples of things they can do. I think it's a lot of modeling for them.
Yeah, so modeling them activities we're doing off screens at home, and as they become teens or spend time with their friends, they have ideas. Yeah.
I'll also add to this that you're 100% correct. There's been a lot of research looking at the restrictions that society is placing on teens, and they've increased dramatically with curfews, with teens not being allowed to congregate in parks in groups of more than 3 people, all kinds of restrictions. And on the one hand, I understand it. We want to protect our teens. On the other hand, if we don't give them opportunities to grow and learn more adult behavior, then it doesn't magically happen. So one of the things I might suggest to some parents is ways to structure this. So if you're the parent who's able to drive several teens to a shopping center where it's safe for them to walk around, and you stay in one area so that they know that you're there if they need you, if you're able to take them to the movies and sit really far away. So again, that they have those opportunities to be on their own, to practice some more adult-like behavior, but you can be that safe base if they need you. So really trying to think and asking your teen, where else would you like to go? Would you like to go see a concert with your friends? And again, maybe I sit slightly further away. So it's about giving those opportunities to start to develop those behavior, knowing there's probably going to be some missteps. But if you're that safe place for them to come back to, so when there are some missteps, you can help them to course correct as needed.
I just want to say, I think your point about there's no place for teenagers to go is a great one. There's no third spaces for them. And we don't create it. And it's weird because I'm thinking now, like, with all the concern we have about teenagers, why are we not providing that for them? I don't know, coffee houses or places where they could do like story slams, just places with games or table games and stuff like that. That's not called a teen center. Anything but calling it a teen center. But maybe there's just not enough like market value in it, like because teenagers don't have the money, so maybe people don't build things for them. That would be good, but I mean, I think that's a really important, there's no place really for them to go, to just hang, that's comfortable and teen-oriented.
Just wanted to give a shout out to libraries because they do have some pretty cool programs. It's not a cool suggestion, but they have some great programs and very accessible, in most communities. I've seen some libraries that just have done some beautiful renovations and things, and they really are trying to maintain that third space, which is so needed. And community colleges have some pretty good offerings too, like over the summer and things like that.
Well, and because I have a microphone, I'll jump in too, because that's how I roll. I think it's also important that we have unstructured, maybe even unsupervised time, because we have to have space as we're developing to do dumb shit, right? To make mistakes. And yes, there's risk of trouble. Yes, there's risk of injury. And also, that's how, to your point earlier, Allison, that's how we learn resilience, is by maybe stepping a little too far over our comfort zone, saying, okay, let me back that up a bit. And I appreciate your point, especially about like cities, like, are the parks safe? Are they in good repair? Is there an outdoor space to go? I'm a huge proponent of Go Touch Grass. Is that available to a person, right? We have to think about a lot of these things, yes, as age and development, teenagers, tweens, emerging adults, and also the intersection of that with socioeconomic status, geographic location, what is available to a person. I wish there were simple answers to these very good questions. Chris, you have another one.
Hi. So my mom also has the mindset that everything is a teachable moment. And we've been best friends my whole life. But as I'm getting older, our relationship is kind of shifting a little bit. Like, I don't always need my mom. I don't always want my mom. Sometimes when I have a break from school, I'd rather go out with my friends than go home. And I've always taken her advice because I always wanted my mom as a kid. But now that I'm getting older, I guess what advice would you have for kind of setting that boundary that, you know, I don't always need my mom and I kind of need to make my own mistakes?
I'll jump in.
That hurts. It's so accurate, and as you're speaking, we were all going, yeah, we know that. But you know, I'm gonna guess your mom worked really hard to cultivate that relationship with you, and would love to hear how much you value it. And at the same time, she also needs to value that you now want to become this more independent person, and that's exactly as it should be. But it's not always so easy and smooth as you said so beautifully. So one of the things is to initiate the conversation with her, and that might feel a little scary, a little anxiety provoking, but my guess is that she would want to know about this from you, because again, she has invested, you know, the time and energy into this. And it can be as simple as, hey mom, now that I'm getting a little bit older, how do you see our relationship changing? You know, and maybe ask her to offer some ideas about how she views that. And that could just, again, open up the conversation to then allow you to express a little bit more of some of the hopes that you have, and also some of the frustrations, and to figure out where might be a place for you to both kind of expand this. And it can be an opportunity for you, as you said, to grow more independent skills. And it's also an opportunity for her to start to develop some of her own interests and skills separately from you too. But again, it's not always the easiest path, but it's the one that, again, it comes naturally in terms of as we age, but it doesn't always emotionally feel so natural or so easy.
I would love to give your mom my phone number because I've got two children. When I was introduced, there was this mention of my son who's in recovery, and I also have a daughter. And both of my children I'm very, very fortunate to have a close relationship with. But I had to learn about boundaries, and it was a hard lesson for me, but it became very apparent, especially with my daughter, who really struggles with some mental health challenges, that I felt like I needed to be her kind of pocket psychologist, her BFF, like the whole thing, and it wasn't appropriate. And I really was blown away when she moved 3,000 miles away to California and was thriving. And we don't talk all the time. We talk probably once a week or so, maybe twice a week. And that's beautiful. She's 34 years old, so it's been a while. But, that message that you don't need me every minute of the day is a really beautiful thing. And hey, sweetie, you've got this. Like, you've been through harder stuff than this, So my card's on the be a part of the conversation table out there. Give her it's got my cell number on it. We'll talk.
Yeah, I think the piece I would add is there's that fear and anxiety that mom might feel like I'm pushing her away or not want to be part of my life. I think I'm pretty confident, can't be 100%, I don't want to make any guarantees, but I think as a parent, they'll come to the realization if you're setting boundaries, when they reflect and have a moment to not get out of their own emotion, right? I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's okay and healthy to set boundaries. This spring semester, my son, who's on the spectrum, and my wife was terrified. He was going to go he's at Bucks Community College, and he was going to walk to his first class. She was terrified he was going to get lost. So she had a whole plan. She was going to walk him there. And he's 18. He goes, "You are not walking to class with me. Let's be clear. Even if I get lost, I have a cell phone. Like, you're not." And she got home. She's cried the whole ride home. But it was that. Once they've gotten out of the motion, I think your mom will find this is healthy. This is expected, and will only grow your relationship in different ways.
Thank you,
So I had a question about screen time. It's in schools now, you're given a Chromebook. I grew up using Khan Academy, IXL, Class Dojo. So by putting those systems in place at elementary school, how do you expect teenagers to not seek out that dopamine hit because things like Class Dojo, IXL, you're rewarded for completion, whereas now we're scrolling on TikTok and getting dopamine from each new. How do teens kind of break that cycle?
And so, to your point, it starts with us as educators. We too have to, when we're selecting all of those tools that you're talking about, you know, the Class Dojo, where it's constantly showing on the screen everybody's points, and IXL, and that all iReady, everything has the screen components to it. We as educators, when we've been buying into that for so long, because when we're looking at curriculum, whether or not you realize it, it's a process that we all go through in education to really select curriculum, and we feel that we're pretty careful about it. But to your point, we are now at a time where we have to start taking that into consideration. Is curriculum too packed with technology? Has it taken away from the art of teaching? I'm somebody who says often that I don't know that the teachers we're raising today actually can teach, because gone are the days where we're encouraging young teachers to create and not to rely on a scripted curriculum. And so we have to do better. And we have to do better with how we're training young teachers to be master teachers and with what we're purchasing. So that starts with us.
Very fair criticism. We embraced it as a tool, but I think it, rather than just being one of the tools in a teacher's repertoire, it's started to become the sole tool. And we have a lot of self-reflection to do about that. I'm excited some of my teachers are starting to introduce choice for kids. So like, hey, do you just want to do this on paper? Or do you want to use technology? And some kids, obviously choice is always a good component of an educational approach, but reintroducing that idea of like, hey, you literally can hand draw your comic script versus using the computer to create it, and giving kids options to escape, and providing opportunities for that. But we are guilty as charged of jumping on board as well with technology and handing you a device that you even take home, right? Take it home with you on top of it. And then we assign you homework on it on top of it. So yes, in fairness, but I think it's also trying to balance the purpose of a device. And we're, hopefully, and we're getting a bit better at that, teaching how to use, when am I using my devices for entertainment and social interaction, and when am I using my devices for work? Because those are things you'll have to balance in adulthood as well. You're going to be eventually deciding, hey, I have to use my technology to complete my work. That's an obvious component of what you're going to have to do. But then how do I balance that both with my entertainment? And I think kids right now, the fear is you're using a lot for your work, and then on top of it, you're spending a lot of time for the other pieces as well.
Anybody else? So I'm going to piggyback on that question. I know in Harrisburg, they've put forward a bill to ban phone usage in public schools, which is going to be interesting to watch that play out. And good luck to all of you teachers in public schools who have to enforce that. I wonder if you all see, immediate benefits. That's probably the easy one. I wonder what kind of unintended consequences you might see coming from that shift, if the phones are completely gone in the schools.
Well, I think we need to be really clear that there's a huge difference between an ebook for note-taking and curriculum and all that kind of stuff and social media. I'm sure you're aware of this study that was done where they asked young people, they had different sample groups, and they asked this, like group A, what would we have to give you to take away social media for a week or a month or whatever it was, and they said, $1 million. And then they asked group B, like, if everybody in your school had to give up social media, the participants were like, we'll pay you. So it's basically FOMO. I don't want to not be on it because I might miss something. I need to be engaged and involved. But if we're all in, I'm in, and we see that with IOPs and things like that, where the kids all have to put their stuff away. they're thrilled. They don't really even want it back, you know, because they've appreciated that brain break from that. So I feel like legislation gets passed. I mean, let's look at Australia. That's what they're doing, and let's see what the outcomes look like. I think it could be a really, it's so needed. Something has to happen.
We have kids doing it themselves, the Luddites, you know, there's kids doing things where they trade in their smartphone for a flip phone, and they go out, especially there's a group in Brooklyn, they go out to the park and they read magazines, and they make zines, and then they do crafts and they do stories and stuff like that, and it's catching on.
I think it'll be really interesting because different school systems are integrating technology, including phone use, in different ways. So there's, in some school districts, students are used to checking their phone regularly to see communications from teachers, from other staff members regarding meetings when assignments are due, where a conference will be held with the teacher. So it'll be really interesting to see how schools need to adapt to that. I think there's also, of course, a lot of security concerns. Parents have school shootings, things of that nature, emergencies. So I don't think it will be a simple transition. And I also, again, thinking about the question we just had with students using computers as often as they do throughout their typical school day for instruction and then after the school day for homework. I'm curious whether the phone use will really have as much of a positive impact as we're hoping it will. I'm not convinced. But I'll keep an open mind.
We'll see. If it passes, we'll see.
If it passes.
Yeah. Other questions?
So I have a question. I'm hearing a lot from parents and teenagers looking to the future of what do I do after high school? And there's so much anxiety of I don't know what I'm meant to do. I feel pressured to be looking at colleges and deciding where to go. And parents feel under that pressure too. What would you say to those parents and teens looking towards their future after high school, maybe not being ready for college? And if they are, what's there to support them?
To support them.
Support them.
Stunned silence is how you know you got a good question. Yeah, we're all thinking.
Can I answer?
I don't think I can stop you, Phil.
There's the trades.
Here, Phil.
You always have the trades. If you want to learn something about life, get in the trades. I've made a life of it.
You know, I think in our community, it's really hard. I think it's very hard. Oh, wait, no, it's on. Sorry. I think it's really hard to be the student or the parent whose kid is not going to college because everything is so geared toward that. I mean, all the conversations in school, the guidance counselors, everything's so college. And you're the one or two kids in a class of a couple hundred people who's not going to school. In our community, it's difficult to be that person, and I'm often talking to parents. There are other options. It doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't have to be college. It doesn't have to be college next year. But, you know, there's like T-shirt day. What do you wear when you're the one kid who's not going to college? Everyone has their college T-shirts. You're at the graduate party. Oh, where's your daughter going to school? She's not. You know, go be the parent who can own that and say, no, my daughter has other things she's going to do first or whatever. But I think it's really hard here to be that. But I would love to see more room for that because a lot of kids end up going to college. They don't want to go. They're not ready to go. And it's just a crash and burn by October.
Or they're pressured into going by hopefully well-meaning parents or peers or guidance counselors. Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with this area.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, we live in an incredibly saturated area. I mean, you could swing a cat and not only hit a university, but arguably some of the most reputable universities in the country, if not the world. And we have to talk about teaching our children, but teaching our children that that's not the way it is all over the country or all over the world. You don't drive down I-95 and every other billboard is a university that people know all over the world. that's unusual. And I don't think we have enough conversations with our kids that we live in an unusual area. This East Coast from, Boston to DC, and the amount of prestigious higher education institutions that kids see it's eye candy. And you feel this need to latch onto it as a kid. And really talking about, why do you want to go to college? Is it because you just see it everywhere? Or is it because that's going to get you your end result? And we also live in a world where there's so many different routes. You don't have to go to college. I mean, right now, our local technical institute, MBIT, they can't even take 40% of the kids that want to go there. So there's actually room to open up more institutes of technology, and really showing kids that environment at a much younger age. If you feel that it's not, college isn't the right path for your child, show them other paths. But our technical schools are far beyond what they were even 10 years ago. And it's important for kids to know that and see it. Yeah.
And I think some of the conversation is shifting. I know, at least for us, we have an internship program. We have an individual that's in charge of that at the high school level and supporting kids doing internships, so they're exploring options. And those internships could have nothing to do with ending up being a college even degree. It could be something in the trades. It could be something, an entry-level job right away after you graduate high school. I mean, the last couple years, we always had the college fair. That was like the big college. The gym at our high school is enormous, and it's filled with all these colleges. And we're now having a job fair for like immediate employment, whether that be right now while you're still in high school, whether that's when you graduate, and introducing kids that it's not just the one path to college. We still have room to grow there. Ironically, in the special education world, we force you to talk about it as part of your IEP, which is well-intentioned, right? We want you to have a plan because we've seen historically data linked to kids and individuals, adults with disabilities struggling with employment. So I think that obviously the intention and the purpose is good, but I'm sure that does create some anxiety. In many meetings where we're like, yes, I know you're 13, we're having this conversation in 7th and 8th grade, and when you graduate, what do you want to be? It's way too early. And I think kids knowing that there's grace with that you won't figure it out. The data's there, that people change jobs a lot more frequently now than they ever did before, and them knowing that. And I do think there is some of that being different as a parent and accepting exactly that same thing. The PowerPoint that's going to go up that shows up your kid and where they're going next year, and having the courage to accept that, hey, my kid's name might be up there that may not have a college next to it, and that's okay, and making them feel okay about that. I think we're making growth in that area, but I'm sure it's still a high pressure piece, and for the parent as well. So not only is the kid feeling it, the parents feeling that societal pressure and norms of their peers as well.
And I think there was another really important part of your question where you said the teen is asking, what am I meant to do? Most of us are going to be working well into our 60s, perhaps 70s and thereon. So we will have lots of opportunities to do so many different things. So you don't have to be meant to do just one thing. And in fact, I think most of us are capable of doing many things, of contributing in so many meaningful ways. So one of the questions I might ask my teen is, what is it that you like working hard at? So are you the kid who loves spending time trying to figure out why the appliance broke and how to fix it? Are you the kid who loves spending time outside trying to figure out the different plants and what will make them grow, or how to destroy the weeds without killing the plants? Or do you love trying to figure out how to train your dog to do unusual tricks? Are you the one who loves to sit and write stories? And so answering those questions can help figure out some direction and then figure out some of these next steps. And with that, to not be afraid to change your minds. What might make sense when you're 17, 18 may not be the same path when you're 21, 22, and that is a wonderful and amazing thing. And fortunately, we do have so many different options of ways to receive training, whether that be at technical schools, community colleges, four-year universities, certification programs. Again, there's just an endless amount of opportunities, and they can feel really overwhelming in the moment, but I think that it's important to take some breaths, to pause for a moment and to remind ourselves that, again, we have lots of time to do all these different things, and it doesn't have to be decided today.
I just want to say, I think you made a great point about most people in this country don't live like we do here. And I think kids need to know that before they go out. I remember years ago, my twin boys were rummaging through the kitchen. Your point about parenting moments. Rummaging through the kitchen, and Austin turns to me and goes, "Mom, there's nothing to eat." Of course, there's stuff. It's just nothing he wanted. And I actually teared up. I started crying. I'm like, oh my God, you need to know that the rest of the world doesn't live like we do. But to open up a cabinet in, pardon me, here, in our community, and to say there's nothing to eat made me so sad. But it was a parenting moment. I said, you got to know. I just remember that. I think that was a really good point.
So the tag I'll do onto that is we also, as parents, want to think about changing the questions we ask, because the default is, hey, where are you going to go to college? Where we could open that up and be more, what are you thinking about doing after high school? Right, that leaves that door wide open, which could also create anxiety. I mean, any question to anybody can create anxiety. But to take away that binary choice, are you going to college or not? Right? Like, hey, what are you interested in?
What do you mean you're not going to college?
Right.
I know, right?
I think we have time for one more question.
I have 3 teenage boys, 20, 18, and 15, and their high school only focused, I shouldn't say only, but highly focused on going to college. And I think as a parent, it doesn't matter what I said, when they were hearing that at school, it overrode everything that. So I think that a lot of it has to start with the school districts and the high schools and even the middle schools opening up the opportunities for them. And, like right now, the high school that my kids, well, one of my child still goes to, in their freshman year, they have to start their senior project. And it starts with writing a letter, not a letter, but more like an acceptance, this is what why I should be accepted into your college. And then their sophomore year, they go and visit a college. And then the next year, there's the things that they have to do adding up to these senior projects. But I just had a son who graduated last year who knew from 7th grade he didn't want to go to college. And no opportunities were opened up to him by the high school or the middle school. They were opened up by myself and my husband, and luckily he took our advice and was able to open some doors for himself by joining the military. However, he was not supported, and he had to fake his senior project to, and again, the end of the senior project said, but I'm gonna join the military. But he had to go through all those steps because if he didn't do it, he wasn't graduating. So I feel like a lot of the support that the parents need needs to start from the school districts and opening up different doors for them that they have no idea exist, including a gap year. It's okay for you to not do this, or including go to community college, then you'll figure it out, and if you go to a community college for a year and you don't, then that's okay, So I think a lot of it has to do with the district set from the start,
I love when I hear that a school district is partnering with local businesses to offer internships and things. Apprenticeships, you never really hear about apprenticeships. I think that would be such a great thing to bring back because in my talk about career changes, not knowing what you want to do, I totally changed my career at the age of 50. You know, I used to be a graphic designer, and a lot of young people seemed to think they wanted to be graphic designers. So I was like, yeah, come do an internship. And about half of them were like, yes, this is great, I want to do it. The other ones were like, not for me. You know, beautiful. A lousy internship is one of the best things because it's like, I was about to invest all this time and money in something I don't really think I'm going to like because I'm experiencing, you know, my son was going to be an architect, and then he started working for architects and found that 90% of architects don't design museums. You know, they're designing strip malls and, I mean, you know, developments and things like that, and it wasn't what he thought it was. And so learning that early on is such a beautiful gift. So I think for young people, even networking their parents' friends and like, who can you shadow? And that kind of thing is a really nice opportunity.
Anybody else? Yeah, and so one of the, I have about an hour's worth of systems talk in my head about what gets in the way of like doing a better job through the school district, and I'm not going to subject you all to that. But suffice to say, there are systems that keep these things happening, and especially when we know our kids don't fit that, it does fall to us as parents to, you know, cut a different path or to find those resources, which is another stressor. We could talk about this stuff all night, huh? I'm going to turn back to our esteemed panel here. Does you all want to leave us with some parting words of wisdom?
That's a lot of pressure.
I know.
I think I'll reflect back on something that Janet had said about being genuine. I always find that teens have a pretty good sense of the adults that like teenagers and the ones that are scared of teens and the ones who really don't like teens. And so if you're looking to make connections as an adult, the first starting point has to be finding something about teens you like. And so learning about their interests, their passions, the things that make them laugh, the things that make them cry, you know, all of those things. So really coming from a place of true curiosity, and that's really a wonderful place to start to build those connections.
And thinking back to really developing relationships. And I think we're all talking that language and how important it is to develop those relationships, but couple that with a careful awareness as to what relationship you want to develop with your teenager and naming it so they understand all the different steps and the messiness in relationship, acknowledging that all relationships are messy and that's the good stuff, and building memories. I think that's the most important thing along the way, that the people that we're closest to are the people that we're able to say, oh my gosh, remember 20 years ago when this happened? And that is such, that we go mentality, and thinking about that and talking to your kids about that we want to look back, we're going to look up back on this and we're going to talk about it, and it's going to make us laugh, or it's going to make us cry, or it's going to make us angry. That's what keeps us all together, is that storytelling. So just keep telling those stories.
I think I would go back to talked a little bit with this narrative of teens and this idea that they're nothing but trouble. I think we talked in the very kind of opening part a lot of the positive things that are going on for teens and what they bring to the table at that age, and the creativity, embracing those things, celebrating them, and then also encouraging, something we talked about, that unstructured place, giving some space for our teens to make some of those mistakes. And then having conversations about, hey, I made some mistakes too, and being open about what those mistakes are. Because sometimes I even have self-reflection about, like, oh man, I don't want my kids to, you know, we have a lot more information now than I think my parents did about what's the dangers out there. And so kids were coming up, I'm terrified to let them out of the house. my parents let me run down the street and didn't call for me till dinner. And that's like crazy to me to think I would have done that with my kids when they were younger. But creating opportunities for unstructured, unsupervised, so they have to work through conflict with their peers. They have to work some of those things without that rescue there. I think is important for our kids to be able to grow, and so that it's not so anxiety producing when it's like, oh my gosh, I am hitting 20, 21, 22, and now I need to be on my own, but I haven't created a space for that as a parent. I think that would be the last piece.
Well, I'm often thinking about the parents who are faced with some really tough challenges with their kids when they first discover that they've been using a lot of cannabis or drinking or whatever it is, self-harm, things like that. And when we're in fear mode, we tend to either lecture, it's kind of like we're in either flight or fright, or freeze and flee and all that kind of, we're just, our heads are spinning, my hair's on fire, I need to say the right thing, I need to shut down this behavior because I'm scared to death that you're gonna die, something bad's gonna happen to you. And we have this acronym that we parents love so much. In fact, one of the women who's very involved with us as a volunteer got it tattooed on her body. It's the acronym WAIT, which stands for Why Am I Talking? And it's just taking a moment, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. When you hear something or you see something that's really scary in your child's behavior or choices, to recognize that, when my son was in his active addiction before he found recovery, I would give him the most amazing lecture, and tell him all the reasons he needs to think this through and da-da-da-da. And his dad and I would sit down with them, and Daniel would walk away and saying all the right things in response to us, and we would feel like that went really well. And the next day we were right back in the soup. And what we needed to know, which I've learned since then, unfortunately a little too late, thank God everything has worked out in his case, but our parents love that acronym because it really reminds us, and it can happen in all aspects of your life when you're talking to other members of your family as well, but just to listen. I loved when Janet, when you were sharing some of those really heartbreaking stories of parents who, the dad that missed the opportunity to lean into what his son had created at school and things like that. Just to remember to do more listening than talking, and really hearing them and seeing them. And I loved what you said also about sharing of yourself. But those scary times can be really traumatizing for us, and as parents, we want to shut it down, but just, wait.
I would say, one of the more important things for me is I think as adults, we should be a little bit more open to showing up differently than we have been doing. And it's kind of like, well, what do you mean, Janet? There are people who teenagers gravitate to, listen to, go to for advice or mentorship, and there are adults who teens don't. And I think if we examine what's the nature of the conversation, how does it differ between these two groups of people? Because if we want kids to listen to us, we need to talk to them differently. We need to relate with them differently. And I think even if an adult doesn't know what that looks like, just to say to your kid, this doesn't feel great, and I'd like us to feel better about talking about these things or doing these things, and I don't even know what to do. I just know that I want to do it, and I'll be thinking about it, and I just want to let you know. Anyway, and then go off. It's not a big lecture. It's just a gesture of, I really want to do things differently. Or even a parent who says, I want to talk to you so badly, but I'm trying to do it without asking questions, and I don't know what to say. I mean, that kind of thing is kind of disarming to a kid. They'll probably smile and you just say, anyway, I'm still figuring it out. But that kind of candor and transparency is very attractive really to anybody. And I just think if we could not focus so much on this teenager's doing this, or disrespectful, it's like, well, what's happening? What's happening in the larger context that would cause that teen to say something that's inappropriate? I think if we're more responsible for how we show up, we could really make some big changes in relationships with our adolescents.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for our panel, Allison, Heather, Neil, and Kim. Thank you, Janet, for being our center stage today. Thank you to all of you for coming out. For those of you still watching on YouTube, for streaming along. We appreciate you being here. Have a lovely night, and take care of yourselves.